Hello there, my name's Card. In my day-to-day life, I work in historical research, and here on my YouTube page, I like to make videos talking about things that interest me. Today, I just wanted to briefly articulate a bit of an abstract hypothetical concept I haven't heard anyone bring up before. Please bear with me. Some historical work I was doing earlier this year essentially had me going through catalogues and catalogues of ancient Roman coins. And I was picking up on how all these coins, which are still being found all the time throughout Europe and North Africa, essentially need to have their place and time of origin identified to be of the most archaeological use they can be. Ancient Roman society spanned a long time, and we've already found literally millions of their coins, all the way from the earliest days of the Roman Republic through to the late Empire. You can absolutely learn a lot just looking at these sorts of coins. But I think one of the most interesting observations you can make is of a process called debasement. Debasement is essentially what happens when a society runs out of the usual high-quality materials it makes its coins out of, but they still need to keep making more. So they end up using cheaper, more plentiful, but inferior quality materials so they can keep making enough currency just to keep the economy going. For example, let's say you've got a civilization whose main unit of currency is a pure gold coin with a face value of $1. 200 years on, and you're quickly running out of new gold to make money out of. Even if you could recycle the old coins perfectly well and recirculate them, you still need more and more. So you start diluting the new coins into, for example, a 80-20 gold-nickel alloy. Another 50 years, and you've only kicked the gold shortage problem down the road a generation. So now you're doing 10% gold, 40% nickel, 50% tin. But your whole economy is predicated on the fact that these far cheaper coins are supposed to have the same face value as the pure originals. You end up having not quite the same problem as inflation per se, but it's an issue. Interesting thing about the Roman Empire is you can pretty consistently chart its slow terminal decline over its last couple hundred years by just how shoddy the coins you dig up are. That's a worthwhile thing to know about ancient Rome, but the project I was working on before Roman coins was about really, really early Greek stuff, like pre-classical era, the time of Homer and the very early epic poets. Having spent some time focusing on that area and time got me thinking about a particular trope that comes up in all these pre-classical stories. The protagonists, the heroes, are always described as being so much better than any person living even when the stories were written. They're all physically and mentally so much more superior. And not just the demigods like Achilles or Heracles, but even normal mortal men like Odysseus and Jason are typically described as being 8 feet tall and capable of great feats of strength like wrestling lions to the ground and uprooting trees. Even the occasional female hero, like Atalanta, shows up in pre-classical texts and is described as being able to run at superhuman speeds for miles and see like a hawk. If you read these ancient stories now, it's easy to just get wrapped up in the heroic fantasy of it all. But I think it's really interesting to note that these tales were being authored and retold under the explicit framing that they were accounts of a physically superior, distant precursor type of people. Now, put everything I've just told you about Roman coins and Greek heroes aside in your mind for a moment, but I promise I am going somewhere with this. Reincarnation is the idea that your soul, or some indetectable element of yourself which transcends your physical body, lives on after you die to come back in another person. And the idea's been around essentially forever. It's been a theological feature of heaps of religions over the years, and it's a fun alternative to supposing that your soul either goes to some sort of afterlife when you die, or that it just doesn't exist. No scientific evidence suggests reincarnation is real in any sense, of course. But that doesn't mean you can't have a little fun thinking about the hypothetical implications. One particular question that skeptics and critics of reincarnation theory have been putting to its adherents for at least a few hundred years now is, if all currently living persons possess a soul passed along from someone who died in the past, how do you account for the population going up? It's a good question, and even now, within living memory, the world's total human population has gone from 2 billion to close to 8 billion. You'd think there's only so many dead people's spirits to go around. The next thing I'm going to briefly go through is purely ahistoric, very woo-woo metaphysical thought experiment type of idea. But please bear with me, I'm going to bring it around to a real, actionable point. Some believers in reincarnation assert that while people's souls do come back to Earth to inhabit new bodies in some capacity, there is some divine presence overseeing the whole process who can intervene and presumably add new souls to the cycle as necessary. Others say that the total amount of souls in circulation, if you will, actually includes animals and plants and maybe even landforms like mountains and rivers and forests. I've seen a few belief systems which say, yes, only human souls can reincarnate into more people, which means that somewhere out in the universe there must be another population of humans that are presumably dying at the exact same rate new people are being born on Earth. It's all interesting, if entirely untestable and unprovable. I recently thought of another hypothetical explanation, which I don't believe myself, I want to make that clear, but it's definitely fun to think about. And I did go looking to see if anyone else had publicly suggested anything like this before, and as far as I can tell, no one has. My interpretation is, let's say there is a fixed, finite amount of souls total. For the sake of keeping it simple, let's say the number is 1 billion. If the population ever exceeds this amount, perhaps new people being born are essentially apportioned only a fraction of a soul each, whether by intelligent divine intent or just by some purely natural process we just have no way of perceiving. Let's say the total number of souls is around 50 million, which is our best estimate of the world population around the year 1000 BC. Under this theoretical framework, perhaps the degradation of the human species that the authors of those epic poems imply to have happened in their relatively recent past could be attributed to the fact that there's not enough human spirit to go around and make everyone 8 foot tall and immensely strong and so on. It's essentially as if someone or something were debasing the raw material stock the currency of humanity is made out of. This alone is all just pure fantasy. But let's say you wanted to use this premise for a creative work. It would be a fun idea to play around with. You could write a story about a society noticing that change happen after a massive population boom. Or the opposite. Let's say you wanted to explore the concept of a post-apocalyptic setting where the world's population is massively decreased and any new people being born are phenomenally more powerful. And you could definitely extend the mechanics of the idea past just the setting of your story. Let's say you wanted to make something like a real-time strategy game, like the original Age of Empires, where you're in control of a little Stone Age tribe, but all of your little villages are stronger and faster the fewer of them you have. There's really countless ways you could be inspired by a premise like soul debasement. But the actual meaningful thing I think is worth taking away from all this is that perhaps the best way to have creative ideas is just to completely engross yourself in two completely unrelated topics for a while, and then you'll unconsciously be in the right frame of mind to just start connecting the dots in unique ways. A lot of people I talk to all the time ask me how they could be having more creative ideas, and you see that sentiment shared a lot online too. And it's a shame, because it'd be nice if more people could come up with interesting new ideas like they want. And I think the reason people frequently can't is because they assume the process is just trying to imagine something you haven't seen before, which is a very hard thing to do. If I had to try and come up with a prescriptive solution to feeling uncreative, I would say just go get incredibly invested in something you've never done before for a good while, and then get invested in a second thing for a bit, and you won't be able to not have plenty of good ideas you can play around with. Anyway, that's all from me today. I hope it might have given you something interesting to think about at the very least. If you might want to hear more from me again, feel free to subscribe to this YouTube page, or take a look through my older videos. Once again, my name's Card. Goodbye for now, and have a lovely day.